So this week's about Streamlit, and Streamlit is a web framework that allows you to build very nice dashboards that are meant for doing data things, right? So in the past, you guys use Matplotlib. That's what you did last
Jason,
week.
are
Yeah.
are you sharing your screen?
Oh, I can here. Good call. I was, and then I wasn't.
Question: have we learned about Faker yet? Is that one of the days I was gone?
Yeah, that was back here in week whatever. I don't remember what that was. I just had you go out to the video of the year prior.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I think it was, well, yeah,
Right
there
there.
it is.
Okay.
Week 2. Let's see here. So Streamlit in this week, the idea behind Streamlit is it allows you to build a really quick and easy dashboard based off the stuff that you guys already did. So instead of having to do all the Plotly and all the other stuff with Matplotlib, it's literally this easy as you see on the screen, right? So you import the package, you do an ST write, and it builds it right on a website. You do a write with a particular slider, or maybe you want to write something else, and now you have a nice little GUI UI. It's super simple, really quick and easy things. Then when you're done, you hit deploy, and it actually deploys it out on the net with an actual website that you can associate with it. So very, very slick, very, very easy way to take data that you guys collected, say, for example, last week, and create a web front end for it versus some static PNG files that Matplotlib drew out. It's pretty simple, pretty easy. So to get it up and going, we're going to use this other link that's here that is building a dashboard in Python with Streamlit. And so this is kind of their walkthrough in doing that. That's how we'll end up doing Flask and Django. They also have their little tutorials. And I've always found those tutorials to be really, really good. Like they cover everything you guys need to do. So your mini projects are essentially an extension of the tutorial with some few added things on top of it. Back when I learned Django many years ago, that's how I got started, was using their simple little tutorial that you fell through. That told me all the different pieces that I needed to learn. Then I could apply it to the project that I needed to build out just by changing those little pieces. And since then, a lot of students have found that to be pretty easily. So we use the Panda side for the data wrangling. We use Plotly for the data visualizations. And then Streamlit just works as our front end for building something out. So for example, you can see this here, and then you can deploy a dashboard that looks like this over on the right with some very basic data that you guys already consumed and pushed out. Okay. So if you want to test and see what this dashboard looks like, you can see this if I click on this one here. This is a very simple data population one where you can select a year over here on the left. You can select a color of a theme, and it will automatically generate these graphs based off the data that you already had. And it's a nice GUI front end that you can link people to, send them to come over here and pull this up. For us cyber networking guys, I've used this as a way to take log files out of firewalls and draw on maps as to where people are attacking me from. So I can actually figure out the top 10 countries that are attacking me. I've done it to build nice GUI dashboards like this that are very simple and just pull the data I want without some heavy hitting dashboard appliance. It runs really, really easy. So you are going to follow through with this little tutorial. We're going to walk through that here today so you guys get an idea of what's going on. So the idea here is you have to figure out what's actually in your dashboard. So you have this sidebar mechanism over here. You're going to have some title and you'll have some widgets over here. And you may determine that you want drop downs. It may be things that you type in, things like that. If anybody, I need to slow down here today. It's been a long day. If you built websites, you know that you have like an input box, right? Well, then you have to build in some kind of data sanitization to make sure that if you're asking for an email address, that it's actually an email address kind of thing. That's the kind of stuff that Streamlit does automatically for you. Same way with you building these random dropdowns, it will build those dynamically for you. You don't have to know HTML code, you just need to know Python. So for example, a list of dropdowns is a list. You literally just feed it a Python list and it now becomes all the options that are in your dropdown. When they select one of those options, it tells it what to do. much like a dictionary, right? You pick the key, you got a value of whatever it came out the other side. You can set up multiple columns. So for example, here they have column 1, which shows all these percentages and kind of high level stats. Column 2 is going to be more graphics, and then 3 is going to give you some detailed information over there. All right. So the idea is that we need to pull some data, and you can grab a bunch of different ones. In this case, they want you to pull this US Census Bureau data. So if we click on that, and we can see there's a bunch of different data sets of different things to pull. In this case, we can pull, like, say, this data population change here, and this would be a CSV. So before I get that far, let's go ahead and start up our new project in PyCharm. Now, note, there is no homework this week. There is no mini project 3. There is just you working with Streamlit to be familiar with it, okay? So you have a little bit of a break this week. Mini project 3 won't kick in until we actually talk about Flask. So you've got about 2 to 3 weeks here before you actually have another, quote, homework assignment in this class, okay? So for this side of it, let's go ahead and go out to GitHub. We'll just create a new project like we've been doing. And let's see here, let's do a new. And so this one obviously isn't going to be mini project, blah, blah, blah. It'll just be whatever you want to call it for this test scenario. So I'm going to say my Streamlit test, I don't know, or my Streamlit app. Sure, sounds good. We'll do our standards through here. So Python, no license, add a README, and public. And once we have that, we can go ahead and launch our PyCharm. Let's load up the project. So it'll be project from version control. Click on your GitHub account, and there's my Streamlit app. We'll need to configure a Python interpreter. Just create a new one.
That sound haunts my dream.
All right, so we got our interpreter up. We've got our initial setup, just like everything we're used to. Let's go ahead and go to our git ignore. Make sure we add the idea folder so that we don't set our settings there. Save that. Let's go ahead and commit this the first time just to make sure everything's working. Okay, so we were able to push out, go back in here. Let's just make sure everything's good. And .id is good. All right, so communication, everything like that is all set up and ready to go. Next, what we need to do is grab that data package that we were talking about. So let's do that. And there's obviously several data sets and tables and everything else. I believe the one that they play with here is something like this. And so let's see here. They want us to date state codes. Perfect. Let's go back up.
Hey, Jason, how did you get to this documentation page?
This one here, this is the link for building a dashboard in Python with Streamlit. Let's put this up towards the top here.
Okay. This is week 6, right? 6, correct?
Yes.
Let me see if I can see that. Yeah, I see it now. Okay, thank you.
Now, the bottom two down there, I mentioned that part-time Larry stuff there before. If you are interested in building your own stocks dashboard, this guy has a pretty cool YouTube channel for that. And then I linked specifically to one that will do just that. So this one here was using Streamlit to build a financial dashboard with Python. So if you want to monitor your own stocks and everything else, he shows you how to build a pretty cool dashboard with
Where's
that.
the website hosted at?
What's that?
The Streamlit website. When you set up your Streamlit, where's it? What website is it?
They'll host it on theirs, like as an app for like testing and stuff, but then you can run it on your own website all you want.
Okay.
So you could deploy it out there on DigitalOcean or AWS, Google, whatever.
I need a website.
Yep.
I don't have one. I guess GitHub offers web pages now too.
Yeah, you could do it that way too. And it works that way.
But
Okay.
once I get to the Streamlit website, where do I go from there?
The main Streamlit website just kind of gives you some overall information that I was telling you about. If you go back to the actual link right below the Streamlit IO link is the one for building a dashboard with Python. And that takes you to their tutorial for how to do it.
Okay.
All right. So a couple things that they're looking at in this whole thing is they want to see, like, for example, how's the sales team performing, or finance might be that. In this case, for this app, they're looking for how do U.S. state populations change over time. And then they're going to look at, EDA in order to define what kind of data is best for it. In this case, we're going to use that U.S. Census Bureau data in order to pull it off. So we'll go out there, we'll grab this population change data set. And again, this is just for April 1 to July 1st. And we're going to save this in your in your project folder. We can go ahead and create a data folder. So it's in there, and we can save that. All right. And then just to look at it, we'll go ahead and pull up this CSV, and you can see that in this case, you're going to see a bunch of stuff like this. So we got census information, the population estimates, and a bunch of other ones. Notice that it goes across for a bunch of other information. This is not in the state data that they had before, kind of. It's got names, state codes. Do it this way here. What they're wanting is for you to massage the data to be in this format. All right. So what they're doing is the year, states the year and the total population that it was in that year. So let's go back and look at our data here. Way too many Excel sheets open for this class today. And then we have the 2210 census population. So that's easy enough. That looks good. The rest of these are all estimates. So what we can do just to clean this data up a little bit, I'm just going to edit this CSV directly. And we can take our regions and our division, actually, all this data. We can delete those columns. We got our state, and those are just numbers. And that's fine.
72 states.
Yeah, I don't know why it jumps from for some of these that aren't total states, right? Because you have some up here that are other regions and whatnot. We just need to normalize all the data. So in our case, we're going to take out all this estimates and population changes and all this kind of stuff. Let's just take this out. I believe that's all they want us to do, right? Let's see here. The advantage of subsetting the data by year will provide the necessary format for generating visualizations and sortable data frame. So we're going to end up building this choreo path map that looks something like this. This is something you can do in Plotly that gives you an idea of what the density is in those populations of those different things. All right. So in our case, we could also use a heat map. and the total content. So this is what I wanted to see. We need to reshape that data, which I think we almost have here. Actually, if we just go to their repo, I think we can grab the correct CSV. There we go. Let's do that. So let's just grab their reshaped data. We're going to save that one. So you can click on this one as a whole, and you notice they've just taken the same data but set it up in a format that is applicable for that. In this case, they pulled everything from 2019 on. So let's do a raw, and that gives us the CSV. That allows us to right click and then, well, they don't usually do the save there. Let's try it this way. Download the raw file. There we go. And we can save it right back there in our data folder. Great. Let's go back into PyCharm. And we can get rid of our all data. Still got it open. Perfect. And if we take a look at the reshape data, we can see that it's all kind of set up in there, nice and easy and slick. All right. So that looks pretty good. Go back to our app. And so now we need to actually write the code that will put that all together. So for us, we need to install Streamlit and we need to install the other pieces that come with it. If we pip install Streamlit, then we should be good to go. Again, if you come back here to the main website, they tell you exactly ththose commands to run, pip install Streamlit. So in this case, we're going to click on that and it copies. You go back to this website, click on terminal. Remember, make sure you're in your virtual environment first, and then go ahead and paste that in. And the reason I like using their tutorials is they point you back to the documentation so that every time you're kind of working or get stuck or want to use something cool, you're in the habit of going to read that framework's documentation first. If you just run out to PyCharm and all the, or ChatGPT or Anthropic on any of those out there, they're just going to give you an answer and you're not going to have a clue what that actually means, right? And again, the whole point is that you learn where to go look up that stuff in the documentation. So that's in there. While we're waiting, we can go ahead and just pip freeze that. Remember, that tells us what's in there. So we'll do a pip freeze greater than requirements.
Hey, Jason.
Yeah.
If we forget to configure our local interpreter and we're not in our virtual environment and we install something like Streamlit, for example, can I just do an uninstall, or am I just kind of screwed?
No, you can uninstall, pip uninstall that. And what it does is it just does it for your entire laptop. And so it could cause problems with other packages that you would install that you're using for your underlying operating system kind of thing. In Windows, it's not a big deal, but in Mac and Linux, it can break a few packages if you start installing all that local to your machine.
Okay.
Learn that the hard way.
Okay, so we have that. Now we need to go in and import these libraries. Again, they all have their unique way of importing with their shorthands over here on the right. So we're just going to do that over here. We'll come in, create an actual main Python file. And we'll add that to our repository and get our Streamlit all set up there. Then down below here, again, we're going to use Streamlit, which is just a really low-code web framework. Pandas is going to do all of our data analysis and massaging it, like we learned last year or last week. Altair is just a data visualization library, as well as Plotly, that allows us to deal with creating figures and some other stuff in between. So Plotly obviously is a smaller version of like Matplotlib, right? It's got more advanced things that are inside of there. So to set things up, we can do this basic page configuration. Again, it's very simple to just copy and paste this in. And so this will set our page title at the top. If you want to set a specific icon, obviously we got that there. If you want a wide layout, a small layout, and the initial sidebar is set to be expanded when it starts. We also have it set up for the dark theme inside of here. Now, all those things that we're setting up, page config and all that, if we come up here to the main Streamlit website and we go to their docs, open that in a new tab. And over here, you can start to see what those documents are, right? So for us, we can look at the API reference and you can see ST-write is like the magic under the hood. If you send it a string, it just sends it to it. If you send it in a markdown format, it's automatically going to format everything in between there, right? So it's really, really simple and easy to use. If you use ST-write and you're pass it a whole data frame, it will automatically format it as a table on the website. You don't have to build a whole table with the right number of cells and all that stuff. You just write out that variable and let Streamlit figure out the best way to build that visualization. Now, if you want customization to it, you can obviously build that as well, right? You can set up anything like simple subheaders, badges, captions, a whole code block, something like that. Or if you want to execute an echo, and there's so much that you can do with it that's super, super easy for you to do. All right. And then they have third-party plugins that you can really start doing fancy stuff in there as well. So for us, what we're currently looking at is just the basics of what's in there. And so we would look at something like layouts. This allows us to set up our columns, so ST columns, and then we can determine how many we want. If we want a container on the website, we want a modal pop-up. Again, if you guys have ever done web development and have used things like Bootstrap and wrote HTML and CSS code, there's a lot of things you got to do, right? And this, it's a simple one-liner in Python, and it takes care of all the underlying CSS code. So super quick and easy for you to build something up. All right. Pandentic, if you want to auto-generate the UI from models and data classes, you just feed it the data. Cool. So from your pages, this will allow you to have multiple pages in the project, what you want to show over here in the sidebar. It's really simple in order to pull that kind of stuff up. Tabs, so your whole sidebar, what you want in there, and all this documentation will tell you how to use it. So learn and breathe the documentation so you know how everything works. Right Magic, the one I really cared about was our data itself. Status program. That's not the one I'm looking for. There you go. And so this will tell you how to figure it out. You can set up a configuration page where you set up the individual pieces in it so you don't have to set it up, but you could give your page title and your set page config, or you could actually feed it a TOML file, which is, it's kind of like the requirements file where it has a list of everything that you want to set variable wise, and then it just pulls it in. And it's a certain format, TOML, YAML, all of those are pretty popular configuration file settings. So here you can set your page title, the icon you want it to be, layout, initial sidebar state, and all your menu items. And that's exactly what we copied and pasted into this project, right? So we go back to our project as a whole. That one's this one here, that one. Got too many open tabs here. All right, so we've got that in there. And then what we need to do is now load the data. It's just like we have done within Pandas before. We just need to load that CSV into a Pandas data frame. So we'll copy that in. Note that that's pulling out to our file that we created. So we have our datas folder as well as our CSV file inside of there. Now everything's going to be loaded up in Pandas. And once you have it in a Pandas data frame, Streamlit will actually help again determine the best way to display it. You can massage it, play with it, add everything you want. In our case, we're going to add a sidebar on the left, right? And that sidebar is going to give us the ability to select what year we want it to be. It's also going to allow us to select any kind of color themes that we want to demonstrate in there. All right. So if we copy this code, we'll take a look at what that looks like. So we could throw some comments in here too, right? We could set up page configuration. The idea, by the way, is that this is one simple flat file and it runs an entire website. So set up theme. Get data to pandas df data frame. And then from here, set up sidebar. So again, we got our ST title, which is the title of the sidebar on the left. We threw in an icon inside of there. The year list needs that we need to pass it a list. In order to generate this list, remember this is the list function. We use this back in Python 360. We want to select out of our data frame all the DF reshaped years and unique titles. So what that's going to do is go through our data frame. It's going to look in the year column, and then it's going to pull only the ones that are unique. So if we pull everything in there, which if we look at our data column, right? So we pull our year and we see 2010, lots of 2010s, 2011s, 2012s, 2015s, et cetera, et cetera. This reshape command, or I'm sorry, this year and unique command makes sure that we only pull one of those years. It's like writing a piece of code that says for year in years, if year not in list, add year to list, right? That would be the long way of writing it. That is exactly what unique does, right? Then does anybody remember what this does here?
That's the,
It's the last value of the from the list, from the dictionary.
Right. So it selects one that's either the first one or the last one in the list as its default when it pulls it up in the system. So when we look at this selected year here, it's going to say we want to use a select box. Again, there's obviously other ways to do this. We could do it with a bunch of buttons where people click the button of the year that they want, or they can use a drop-down box. We give it the text that we want inside of the drop-down box. We pass it the entire year, and then we give it an index of the length of the total year minus 1.
does that make it blank?
What's that?
Does that make it, -1 makes it blank?
No, -1 grabs the last one that's inside of there. Yep.
I didn't know if that one did the,
Well, I take it this way. That's not correct. Index is when you set a value. If you remember, when you do the len of a list, you're going to end up with what?
the total number of,
Yeah, right. So you'll end up with, say, 20.
so
But
it's
index always starts at
0.
0. So just make sure that you subtract that one off
Gotcha.
so that it knows the index value it generates is associated with that. And then here we're going to select our year. So again, it's just whatever we set. We're just trying to set whatever the user selected up here in our select box. We are pulling that year of data information out. Then we are going to sort that based off whatever else. So right now we have that by population and we ascend and false, right? If we put ascending to true, then it would sort the other direction. Then we happen to have a widget here, which is this color themes list. We have blues, civids, greens, and everything else. This is all default variables built into Streamlit. These color schemes are. And then down here, we have another drop-down box that says pick a color theme. Cool. So we've set up our nice little sidebar. And then for the actual graphs out in the middle, again, if you're trying to follow along here, if we look at our app, we have now built this thing over here on the left-hand side. So we have this sidebar that goes in and out, and it has these two drop downs with those color options that we selected. And these years are being pulled out of our pandas data frame. Note that it puts 19 at the top and 10 at the bottom. So what that did was sort them the other direction, right? So that the newest one is the one on top.
So instead of saying descending true, you say ascending false, and it does that.
Exactly. Yep. And we'll play with that here in a little bit, so how you can tweak that the way you want it to look like. So now we need to build all this stuff out in the middle. And you'll notice in this is all interactive stuff, right? So if I hit full screen on this particular one, I now have a full screen map of that particular one. I can click on, say, Kansas here, and I can see the population number inside. You could even set that up where when you click on it, it sets up a modal and gives you all the details that you guys didn't necessarily display on the screen. So you can build some pretty cool interactive widgets inside of here. If you want to pan, if you want to zoom in, zoom out, you get all these different options. Again, you would have to code this if you wrote this all from scratch. This is why these frameworks exist, because of speed, right? All I had to do was a couple lines here and I got it up and running. Okay, so from here, got our sidebar. Now we need to make our heat map, which is this one that was down here at the bottom. And if we take a look at this, it needs the different variables. Heat map, again, is an option that you can choose within Streamlit. The documentation's out there. So if you come out to the documentation and we look at our chart elements, and you can see all these different chart elements that you can set up, simple line graphs, bar charts, scatter plots. These are all documented in here, and you can pull out the one that you really care about. Okay. You can also use some third-party stuff in order to pull that out if you want fancy charts and graphs and stuff. In our case, we are using some fancy ones from Plotly in order to make that work. So if we look over here, we can see that we're setting up a chart. We're going to pull it in. We're going to use the rectangle, and we're going to encode all this data that's coming out. Now, notice we're setting the x-axis title to year. We're not setting a y-axis title down here. We can adjust our padding to make it look the way we want it to, adjust our colors, our font sizes that we want. All of that is very easily adaptable. What's nice about Streamlit is there is a ton of examples out here. So if you guys go back to the main website and look at the gallery, these are all websites that have been built off Streamlit. You can usually click on, say, this weather dashboard like this and say, ooh, this is really cool. I want to build this for for haze, for example, right? I just go up here to fork, and I can end up forking this code in my own Python or in my GitHub project. And then I just tweak all the data to pull the one I wanted to use. So really, really cool, because like say you just want this piece of it in your project, go steal that code and reuse it for that. Absolutely. That's what it's there for, kind of thing, right? All right, not to get off track there. So we stole our heat map. That's going to generate this over here on the side, where we have a column for every single state, and we're going to see the different charts based off the colors of the number of the population. We also have that choreoplot map. This is going to be this one where you can have a colored map of the 52 states, something like that. You guys may have seen this kind of stuff when it comes to an election year, right? You got all these election websites and all those predictions and all the stuff that they're doing. You can absolutely build that in Python on the fly with a single page document. You don't have to write an entire big website to make it work. You could do all that in Streamlit. That's what that stuff's for. And it can do it in real time. So instead of pulling this out as a CSV, you have it attached to a database that's being ingested with information from somewhere. So we have our two functions here of make heat map and our make choreo path. We also have not called those yet, right? Remember Python, we have to actually call them to do something. We have our donut charts. This is just our simple charts that have circles and a number in it, and we can use different scales in order to make that look good. So we need to create our functions for a donut chart. Okay. And then, let's see here, we also had this one down here, which will actually create the donut itself with the different colors that we set. Copy that over. Something like that. And then next, they're going to try to convert that population over to text. Note that we now have numerical numbers in our databases. We need to convert that over to something that's in a more concise form, such as something like 2.9 million. The good news is we just build a little formatter that would do that for us. So if the number is greater than, 1 million, then we say, if not, the number is exactly a million, return it with an M beside it so that we can break it down by millions. And if not, we're going to round that number up to 1 decimal spot. based off the millions that are being displayed. Right, so simple format, all it's trying to do is convert everything to millions. So if it's less than 1 million, it'll end up showing up as something K for thousands. All right. So get that function. And then we set up our actual layout, how we want this to look like in our actual program. Remember, these are just functions. They're not doing anything until we call them. So we just define all these different maps that we want to use. Now we actually have to format our individual file. So we set up our columns. In this case, we're going to use a 3-column structure. Something like that. In column 1, if you go back and look at our actual end project, keep closing it. Over here, we have this first column that has our donut charts and our other graphs numbers up here at the top. So that's column 1. This is our column 0. Remember, it starts at 0, but even though it's column 1. So we copy that in. Now, what do you notice about this particular column? Yeah, we're using with, right? And we've never really kind of used that. So a with statement is used to wrap an execution block in a way that it's a context manager, and it allows us to use try and accepts in order to change content in there. So it's helping us build a dynamic website so that when a user clicks, the page immediately updates and refreshes. Again, if you've written HTML code, CSS code, or something else, you have to write all that code. It doesn't just magically happen. All right, so there's our first column. And we could go and grab our second column, which is trying to do our choreograph and our heat map. So set up column, set up column 2. Even though it says 1, remember we start at 0. So there, let's go do this. Set up column 1. Format columns. That sets up our width, by the way, of how we want that going across there. And the gap that we want between the columns, we can adjust those. So there's column 2. And column 3. Again, if you want to change some of these variables, we can adjust those by going back and looking at the documentation and seeing what these all mean. This is a really good starting point for you to get it up and going. So we take column 3, and again, this is going to be all that data that's over there on the right-hand side, these top states, this about section. You'll notice how that correlates to simple ST writes over here. So when we do an about, you just have an ST write with a string that's formatted the way you want to dump it out on the screen, right? So we see this orange that allows us to set orange text for that kind of stuff. It's very human readable. It makes it really simple to use. Okay, so we've got our 3 columns all set up now. I've got way too much stuff open here. That one. Okay. On the dashboard. So now that we have this up and working, we have a tutorial here on how to actually deploy it. We'll come back to that here in a minute. Wrapping up, it essentially allows us to go ahead and run this. So let's see how we run it. And to run a project, we go back to our main Streamlit. And you can see it's as simple as doing Streamlit hello. We just run Streamlit whatever we want to do. So if we come back to our file here and we do our terminal, which we have, if we just type Streamlit main.py, sorry, Streamlit run, that's what I'm missing. Main.py. And let's see here, we can ignore the email address. And we just allow, come on. And this will allow you to go ahead and run that stuff up. Now, if you look here, we'll see that when we tried to import Plotly, we got some kind of error up here. If we go back to our PyCharm, we can see that same error. In this case, we don't have the package of Plotly. So we need to go back and install those packages. We can hit Control C to stop that from running. You can also use the stop if you end up running up here. If you do something like this where you run it, it's not actually going to execute as you would expect because you're going to end up with that same output. Again, we can do a pip install down here. It's pretty simple. So pip install Plotly. And let's go ahead and update our pip. So pip freeze greater than requirements. And that's there. And let's go ahead and do a commit because we probably should have been doing that all along. So in this case, I want to go ahead and commit my data. You'll know in mini project 1 and 2, we did not. In this case, we want to include that because we refactored that data. So to do that, we will go to Git, add, requirements, Git, add, or instead, if you come over here to commit, again, you'll see those over here. We can select those and the unversion, we can add that as well. All right. In this case, we can again type a message, or you guys can take advantage of the AI that's built into this now. And then we'll go ahead and say adding the dashboard and Streamlit, including the dependencies in there. Cool. Sounds great. Let's commit and push.
That's handy when you do a whole bunch of stuff because you forgot.
You got it. Exactly.
That's what I use it for. It's like, oh, I should have done this 7 times.
I used to spend so much time rewriting all that. Now they just have a click and it analyzes what you changed. Sure.
Super handy.
Okay, so we have that now. Let's see if we can go ahead and run Streamlit. Again, we can run Streamlit, run main.py, or Streamlit is smart enough that if you click the play button up here on the right, it should give us whatever we have. Now, in this case, looks like we have some integer errors and some other stuff. I'll make sure that all that runs as we would expect. And we do have some issues on particular lines down here. It looks like line 194. The data isn't quite formatted the way we would want it to, and it's not matching up. All right, well, let's go look at 194. Here, when we're dealing with this data frame for sorting, height index, column config, states and population. Where's the actual error? Invalid width value. Width must be an integer, pixels, stretch, or content. They had width none, right? So let's set width to stretch. Why not? And when we do stretch, it is a string value. So stretch. And then go ahead and hit play. Okay, so that worked that time. Instead of running play down here, let's go ahead and stop our current running project, run it. The reason it died was because we had this one running over here. So just do one or the other. And if all goes well, your project will run local on your PC on port 8501 by default. And we can now see the heat map that we had in 2010. We have the current losses and migrations. We're not quite getting data values there. Let's select 2019. And now we've got the information coming out. So we can see that. And if we change this over here, we can see that the graphs will actually change over time. So notice Puerto Rico had 3.6 million. Going to 2017, we had 3.3 million. Now notice the reason that it didn't work when we first came to it is why? Why would these not fill in?
You haven't selected an item to fill in with.
You got it, right? By now, you're just seeing the default 2010 population of whatever came in here. If you can't do gains and losses until you pick the next year. So now it takes everything from 10 to 13 and calculates the difference. If we go from 10 to 19, we can see the difference there as well. All right. If we actually liked everything here and it looked really good, by the way, you could download full tables as CSV for a user. So if they want to copy the information off your website, they could do that. If you want to adjust, like all this stuff, you would have to code if you've done HTML and CSS, like super easy.
God,
I hit deploy. Now I can either deploy to the community cloud, which is free, right? You just have to learn what it takes to host on theirs. You can run your own Snowflake server, or you can run on your own cloud hosted software and everything else. Super simple to do. For now, all we have to worry about is it runs on localhost 8501. All right. There's tons of other dashboards. There's some tutorials out there on how to build that, basically covering the same thing we did. But I encourage you guys to use this just as a reference. Go out here and kind of explore some of the other ones that are out there. I've seen them work with, say, LLMs. That's kind of a new one that I was going through, where you could write your own LLM, basically your own ChatGPT style GUI, and connect it on the back end to a real LLM and have it formatted in the way you want it to look. All right. You could add specific data coming out of LLMs. There's all sorts of cool stuff that they've had out here. So it's pretty cool how you want that to come out. There's AI recipes, which is I want to build this app without the complexities of everything else, and tell me to use Streamlit. So that's one thing we'll use next week is you'll be able to use ChatGPT to say, I'm curious about XYZ. Help me build a Streamlit app to do that. Or we have some kind of data set, like a bunch of log files for us cyber guys. We'll pull some log files and then tell it to build us a dashboard based off that data.
could you do with Wireshark data?
Mm-hmm. Yep. As a matter of fact, we'll pull up some example Wireshark files and then just say, here's the Wireshark file. I want a dashboard that tells me this. And it will generally build most of what you're asking for. And then what's nice is you guys know where to go find the documentation for Streamlit. You can then edit and change everything you want it to be. There's a lot more visualization stuff out here in Streamlit extras and elements and things you can do to resize the dashboard, etc. So I'd encourage you to come out here to Streamlit extras, and they've got a bunch of documentation as to what that stuff is. Like I said, this has come real handy, and being in a meeting with a bunch of people and going, man, I wish we could just find a way to visually see what this looks like. And within no time, a little bit of ChatGPT, Streamlit, I go in and edit some of those parameters because I wanted to say this or that. Next thing I know, I'm up and running in a couple lines of code. So to have an entire website visual dashboard in less than 25 lines of code, including comments, that's not bad. Or, sorry, 215 lines of code.
That's good.
Now, this is one of the frameworks that you could choose for your final project. So if you are a data science person or a computer science person that wants to build something based off a really cool data set that you found, and you want to build a nice visualization dashboard, you can essentially use this to do that. And there's a bunch of requirements in the final project, but you can practice that now and choose to do that if you want to. Otherwise, Flask and Django have their own place for their own purpose, kind of thing. All right. How about you guys online? Do you guys have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I'm just gonna have to go back and watch the video so I can follow along a little closer. I kind of got interrupted in here.
Yep, no problem. And like I said, they have their own videos out here. So if you're tired of listening to my voice, feel free to watch their dashboard and stuff and cues on how to build it out. You could also just check out their entire tutorial if you wanted to, or the code. So they do make that available out here on the GitHub repo, which is right, where's the big string? There. And so you can check that Streamlit app basically is what they did, and you can see it all padded in there. Now, they added some extra pieces in here. Like, for example, up here, they had some CSS styling and formatting that we didn't do, and that would give some of that padding and extra details in there. You could also do it with no CSS, and then it's exactly the way we copied and pasted it in there. Right. They even have a Panda's way for you to kind of pull this in with Jupyter Notebook so that you can look at all this data and see what's inside of there. So what they did here was use a Jupyter Notebook in order to format that data. So they pulled in the CSV, right? Then to massage it, they gave the state's abbreviation as a dictionary so that Alabama was AL, et cetera, all the way down. Then we could create the status code based off what that is within that. So one simple one-liner in order to convert that data to the format we wanted it in. Then they came in and grabbed all the columns. Inside those columns, they decided to grab the ones they cared about. Again, we got our data close, save that out as a new CSV, in this case called reshaped, and then we can reshape that data to look exactly the way they wanted it inside there. So if you're curious how they got from that big CSV file I started with on down, you can take a look down here at this Jupyter Notebook and see how they interacted with that and did that. It's a good note for those of you that are wanting to do Streamlit in your final project, which it's a little early to know yet, but I would follow their similar steps.
What is Django and the one you said? What are they
Django and Flask.
What are they used for?
So Flask is going to be more where you're building a website that doesn't necessarily need a database. It has some information like this. Like a real small SQLite database would be sufficient. You don't have to put anything in it, right? You can just format the string. It's usually more of users inputting data. So for, I don't know, a guy built his own Pokemon collection card website. Okay. So what you did there was he found an API that found all the Pokemon people and all the cards. And so all they had to do was go and say, I have that card, I have that card. They would select out of the whole menu. And then it would come back and build a local inventory for that person and then assort those values with all the different data and stuff that came in there. That would be a good Flask project, right? Even if you're not just conceptually, that's what it's for. Django would be a little bit more where you needed a full-blown database to do that because you're not sorting just Pokemon. You wanted D&D and a bunch of others. I don't know. I'm just
D&D, it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
There's many more things. There's more attributes per thing. There's more versions of things.
I've seen people do Magic the Gathering stuff. I try to have you do your final project is supposed to be based on your major. So if you're a computer science major, you have a little more flexibility there. If you are a cybersecurity major, it should be something centered around cybersecurity. So you find an API to get data or statistics, maybe it's the vulnerabilities, or you build a dashboard for all the latest top 10 threats that came out and links, you could do something like that. Or if you wanted to use Flask or Django to build a website to control your network infrastructure and go pull and save logs, that would be an example of what you could do with those two products. So lots of cool choices, and I give you guys multiple weeks and we can spitball over what you got to do. Lots of different.
I would like to overlap with CyberOps.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I'd like to do.
Yep.
So that was my goal, was to build an app that would help us in
All the way
CyberOps.
through.
Like I thought that would be a good dovetail for both.
Yep. So you could have something that would build like a front end to the sign, basically.
That's what I was thinking. Was it would like with Wireshark data or like firewall data or something like
Just ingest everything and essentially build your own at that point.
Yeah.
Cool.
So Jason, when like on Mini Project 2, for example, I use some vulnerability data, and as a cybersecurity student, would I be able to reuse that same type of data on that final project?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's what I was saying all along is you can use the things that you do in your mini projects. If there was something that really interested you by the time you were done with all 4 of them, you can absolutely use that as a jump step into the final project. The final project, again, just has a very detailed, you need to have this, 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 and this. So on top of whatever you wanted to accomplish, it also has to mark all these check boxes on down. So it's wide open in the final project. I want it to be somewhere in your wheelhouse, but again, I think that's like 5 points of the project. So if you want to go off script and not do anything that's in, say, you're a cyber student, you don't want to do cyber, you lose 5 points. That's just part of the rubrics thing. But if you don't care because you really are fascinated on doing this side, so be it. And that rubric and stuff, we'll talk about that when we get much closer to it. But just kind of as an overview, so you guys see what that looks like. I think I have it in here. Timeline wise, this is what it looks like. So starting in week 12, you guys have to write an outline, a pitch basically of what you're going to do. We make sure that you have an appropriate API and that you selected the right framework, that you're not just randomly selecting one because you said it sounded good. Like if you're doing database stuff, you probably should use one of the other ones. If you're doing this kind of stuff where it's data science, you should probably be using Streamlit for that stuff. There's reasons to use the other ones, but how much hand coding do you want to have to kind of set up and do? Django is probably the biggest, bulkiest one of the whole group, but a lot of people find that the stuff that's built in makes it easier. Flask is extremely lightweight, but you kind of have to build everything in between, right? There's some niceties, but you kind of have to build all your own niceties in there. As far as a grading rubric, just demo that real quick. Again, we'll talk about this. This is a long ways off yet. But it'll be things like here on your coding and modularization, did you use it in a way that it's broken and thought up? So did you use methods and functions and things like that you're supposed to be using, that it should be used as a way that I could reuse it in other projects? That's the whole point of the project. All the required elements are there, and I'll talk about those when we actually get in it, but making sure that you have the pieces I asked for, that your code is styled cleanly and I can actually read it and etc. Like it has to be nice and clean and consistent. That your program is well documented. This is particularly talking about the README file at that point, that everything's in there where it's supposed to be. You're using inline comments along the way, that kind of stuff. Making sure that your program handles errors. I will intentionally be trying to break your app. So if I can plug in false data on the UI and it crashes to a broken page, you have 1 to 2 errors at that point. Or if it's 3 to 4, or the program just straight up crashes all the way, you lose those 10 points kind of thing, right? Feedback, when I give you initial feedback based off of your pitch and ideas, as long as you addressed all of that, you get those points. And then relevancy is making sure it's close to your concentration, right? So even here, if it's here where you may not align, it's not relevant, you can still get up to 5 points out of those 10 points. Make sense?
So if I wanted to do,
And relevancy is only worth 10% of the final grade of the whole project anyway, right? So it's not truly 5 points. Like you won't just get a 95. It's only a sliver of the final points.
it's half of 10%.
You got it.
I know how the VA works. I understand how the VA does math, so perfect.
So that's the undergrad side. Graduate has a couple more requirements in there that you actually have to publish it and some other stuff. But that requirement is a little leniency. Again, we'll cover those when we get closer. And then, like I said, you get to the scheduling. You guys will schedule the one-on-ones with me. It's not scary. It's actually super simple. It's just a way for me to grade and you're done. So if you get your project done early and you schedule on week 14, 15 to meet with me because you're done with the class before finals week. The smart ones that work ahead and kind of keep working on it, they can get out of there early. If you're working on something and you get delayed, no big deal. You just have to schedule with me during finals week. Jamie, Rafat, did that answer any questions you had?
Hey, Jason, I have a question about the certification. I know you mentioned about this sometime, that you're working on some kind of some sort of certification for this Python course.
I don't have a
So-
cert on the Python stuff.
Okay,
Are you talking like a cert or a certificate?
like a certification of completion type of thing, like so that I could provide it to my employer, and which could demonstrate the skill that I have in Python kind of thing, and could be something that I can share in the LinkedIn or something.
Yeah, so that kind of falls along with a certificate or even a Credly badge, I think is what we tried to do. I believe
Yeah.
Fort Hayes was going down the badging system at one point. I don't know where that landed. I can reach out and find out if we still have a Credly, and then yeah, I can issue a Credly badge.
That'd be great. Like something to show in my profile or portfolio that I have done something in Python besides the GitHub stuff.
Yeah. Let me figure out what the official stance was on that. I know we had one. I just don't know where it ended up. So
Yeah, that.
cool. All right. So as far as class on Thursday, I don't really have anything because again, there is no homework assignment this week. All I want you doing is going out and playing with Streamlit so that you're familiar with it, so that you can make an informed decision when it comes to the final project. I may want to use that framework. You know what I mean? But there is no mini project centered around Streamlit.
So our mini
Yeah.
projects going forward, what are they based on?
So mini project 3 will be based off of Flask. So we'll do 2 weeks of Flask, and then you will have a mini project due for Flask. We'll do 2 weeks of Django, and then you'll have a mini project for Django due. Those take way longer to cover. Streamlit is, as you can see, is kind of small in this and that. Flask and Django or anything, but
Gotcha.
I could literally spend a whole semester on Django.
Neat.
There's a lot there. We just grazed the surface. The point is that you have to go read the documentation to do all the cool stuff you want it to do. So, why? Because that's real world. Or you consult the oracle of ChatGPT or Anthropic and figure out how to make the changes. You will find out when we get to those, that's a little more difficult to do, right? So Streamlit, because it's one file, I can actually upload it to ChatGPT and say, go for it, buddy. Like fix this or make this adjustment or do whatever. When you start to get into Flask and Django, that's a little more complicated. You can start copying Python files in and it'll know, but its context is only so big. And pretty soon it totally forgot that you set it up this way. It'll give you an answer that changes it on this way. And next thing you know, your whole project fails again. So that's not using it correctly. You don't want it to adjust everything. You want it to just ask me pieces of the code kind of thing. What is nice in the newer versions, you can actually tie it now to your GitHub repo, so we can actually pull the entire thing for context.
That's what I did.
So as long as you're submitting it up there, you point it over to the GitHub repo, it knows where to go find the file.
But it will make changes.
It will.
And you're like, I don't know what you actually did. So
And that's a problem when you're building your final project and you wanted to do something specific that it's in there. So again, the tools are helpful, but you have to use them in a way that's useful. Otherwise,
I've learned to see, everybody knows, if you say don't make changes, it does generally go, okay, should I make the changes now? And they're like, no, I'll make them. Like, okay.
Yep. Just give me step-by-step list of what I need to do. And that's, like I said, that's what we'll cover next week, because I find ChatGPT to be the most useful in that. So you say, I want to build a Django app that helps me do this. It's going to give you the step-by-step instructions of exactly how to do that, starting from pip install Django, all the way through all the different setup measures, and then it'll kind of give you a layout. Well, do you want it to look like this, or do you want it to look like that? Yes, I want option B. Then it will help you walk through. So I find it helpful as kind of an assistant to say, I did step 1, step 2, step 3, and work your way through it. You basically build your own instruction guides with it. Still have to do it, and you still have to code it the way you want it, but it gives you some guardrails so that you're not like, oh, I don't know how to get started.
Yeah, I usually tell it, hey, if you're going to give me step by step, let me give you feedback before we move to the next step.
You got it.
Like, let me test it first. And then if I get an error code, I can give it to you and we can go walk through it.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's like, here's how you fix it. It's like, I haven't even given you an error code. You spent 5 minutes spinning your wheels. Like, thanks, bro.
And there's nothing more frustrating than when you start copying and pasting stuff out of it and then it breaks because it dropped out of context. And now your project's super foobar. So lots of commits along the way is extremely important. All right, I will end the recording.